Hi there, artist. I'm going to be showing you how to paint the background for a flamingo sculpture. So I have already added all of the plants, and I made sure that there are some plants on all four edges of my paper. I did that with oil pastel, although crayons work just as good. And I'm going to be painting the background with some watercolor. Now, watercolor can come in the little cake forms in the little palette, but sometimes it's already liquid, which is what we are going to be using. Well, at least for this one. And watercolor, if it's in the liquid form, it is good stuff, Maynard. So be careful though to try and not get it on your clothes. So this is how we're going to start. I've got my towel for when I blot, and I've got my paintbrush. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure there's no leftover paint on my paintbrush before I wipe, not whack, and then blot it to make sure that the paintbrush is nice and she's on her little tippy toes and she's not scooted around, so all the bristles are together. So this is how we are going to do it, folks. I'm gonna make it like a sunset, similar to this one right here. And I'm gonna start actually with my yellow. Now the yellow is the one that you really need to make sure that you clean your brush with, because yellow gets dirty really fast. So please keep it nice as you can. And in the middle-ish of my paper, you might not be able to see it so well, but I'm just making a yellow line all the way across. That, folks, is the horizon line. It separates the sky from the ground. That's it. That could be a seascape. It is super boring and plain, but it works. I got my sky and I got my ground. Well, in this case, I'm going to paint water. So the next I'm going to do, still with my yellow, is I'm going to go ahead right on my line and make my yellow sun setting. Now I put it half on top of the horizon line and half on the bottom. Why? I put it there, I hope you're thinking, because this bottom half is actually going to be the reflection. And while it's wet, I'm going to swoosh, I'm going to wipe, I'm going to blot, I'm going to use orange, and I'm going to go around my sun for the next layer, for my sunset. And I can go as far as I would like to, dragging this orange. What do you think would be a good color to come after the orange? It's pink. So I'm gonna swoosh, I'm gonna wipe, and actually I'm gonna leave a little water on my brush because these colors are pretty strong. So I'm gonna go ahead with the pink, and you could skip over your plants or you could just paint right over it because we did it with oil pastel. The oil pastel will resist. And I don't forget to go into the water too. All right, now I'm going super duper fast, but you can take your time because if you do, it's going to look even better. And the paints I happen to be using today, I have another version of pink or red, so I can even add that in. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Okay. And eventually, I'm gonna transition into blue sky. Okay. Now again, I'm going really fast, so mine definitely does not look as good as I would prefer it to look. So there's a couple different blues in this case as well. You can see what the effect of it if I went over the oil pastel. Again, that's a choice. I like to work kind of quick while it's still wet, so the colors will blend better. Now you can see this one isn't blending so well. So another thing I could do is I could add a little bit of the other color back while it's still wet to go back and forth to make the transition. That's when it goes from one color to another color even better. Oh man, I wish I had a bigger paintbrush so I can go even faster. So let me go ahead and do the bottom. And the water actually has a special trick. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of it in blue. And if you notice the direction that I'm going, I am using my brush. I stopped going in the circle and I'm starting to use horizontal strokes. That's the kind where it goes back and forth. Let me put a little water on my paper even. So, I do want to show a few more things, so hold on. Do you see how I put water on my paper? That technique is called wet on wet, because you already wet the paper and now I'm adding wet paint onto it. That's actually the technique I prefer when I'm doing a sky, and I'm about to show you more about that technique too. So before, when I started, I put the paint on the dry paper. This, the wet on the wet, allows for better blending. Okay. Now with this, I'm actually going to take some of my blue, just on the bottom half in the water, and to make it look more like a sky, I'm going to add just a few horizontal strokes with my brush on the blue, and swoosh, wipe, blot. I'm even going to do that with the pink. Horizontal, right into the water. It's just to make it look more like the water is ripply. Just like that. And then I can go back up to my sky. Again, thank you for your patience. And I'm going to do that wet on wet technique again, where I'm going to wet my entire sky. And actually, it looks good with just the water that I had left over, or the paint I had left over on my brush. But I'm going to put some more blue in there just so you can see some more drama. Can you see over in this corner? It's a really nice way to make a sky, is a wet on wet, because you don't need that much color. Okay guys, you can play around with yours as much as you want. You might have noticed too, on my Flamingo one, I have dark blue around the edge. I know it's kind of cut off, but you can even add that too. I'm going with the other blue because there's two blues in this container. And I'm adding the other blue right along the edge. And on the wet on wet part, it'll probably bleed out a little bit. You can see it bleed out right there. That's okay. It just blends in, makes it more interesting by putting this dark edge all the way around. All right, guys, I hope you picked up some good tips that you can learn while you're painting your background for your flamingo. So there she is, and I can keep playing and adding. You can see this one turned out completely different than this one, even though I basically used the same techniques. So just explore what looks good to you. All right, everybody, happy arting today.